Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for this day.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
Huge thank you, dear listeners, to Steve Morton for sending that link on YouTube, that wonderful 1973-72 era song Millwall, produced by the club on Decca Records, no less. Decca Records, home of Bing Crosby, I'm reading here, Chuck Berry, Bill Haley and his Comets, Vera Lynn, the Rolling Stones, and also Millwall FC. That's a wonderful piece of history there, listeners. I can remember that single. Younger listeners will probably need explanation of what a single is, won't they? But records in the old days came in album form, which number of songs, or a single song, a 7-inch single song. The noise you could hear on their kids was the needle of the record player being put on there. I'm probably telling you what I know already because vinyl was making a comeback. But anyway, that was a 7-inch single produced by Mill FC. That was the players singing a composition called Millwall, Down at the Den. Great hook. Da 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 Millwall. Love that. Love that hook. Every song needs a good hook, listeners. And there was actually a double A side with the Ballad of Harry Cripps. I will stick links to it's on YouTube. Someone's videoed themselves putting the 7-inch on their record player. So you got Millwall on one side and the Ballad of Harry Cripps, which I'll come back to another day, Ballad of Harry Cripps. But I just think this is a fantastic glimpse into early 70s football. It was quite the fashion at one point for football clubs to produce their own songs. England, every time we went to a World Cup, I remember Back Home in 1970, very, very well. Terrific song. Cup final songs. World Cup, I suppose to some level, European songs when we went to the Euros weren't such a big thing until the later 70s anyway. And it became quite a fashion to link pop music and football. 60s and 70s, it was very much the thing to do. You don't really see this so much nowadays, if at all. I believe some players like to rap. Not sure that's going to be my scene, kids. But you certainly don't do anything now where football and a football club produce a single and a song, for a cup final. It just doesn't work that way. Some of the charm has gone from the game. Huge thank you to Steve Morton from Chat with Chaps who mentioned this song. And I do remember it being on sale in the old wooden shed club shop on Coldblow Lane, listeners. In a plain white jacket on the Decca label. Incredible. Wonderful stuff. Big thank you to Steve Morton for that. But, dear listeners, I'm here to give you a retrospective look at a previous fixture between Millwall and Stoke City, who we play on next Tuesday night. So the one I've picked out is a very, very famous fixture. Some older listeners will remember it very, very well. It was a wonderful afternoon, real backs-to-the-wall fighting performance. Millwall 2, Stoke City 0, played on February the 20th, 1999, 26 years ago. listeners. That's a galling thought. Played in Division 2, it's the third tier of English football, in front of 7,855. I can't find any video of the match, but I do have a match report here for you. From the Sunday Express, very brief. There's a slightly longer one from the Wolverhampton Express and Star, which I'll follow this with, but this sums it up in a nutshell, this wonderful, wonderful win. Millwall 2, Stoke City 0. Lucas Neal is the star man, they say, the Sunday Express. 9-man Millwall claimed all 3 points and the adoration of their faithful with a gritty display. The Lions lost Bobby Bowery after less than 4 minutes for violent conduct during a tussle with Stoke's Ray Wallace. But instead of lying down, they bravely took the initiative. Neil Harris netting from close range in the 39th minute after Lucas Neal's corner. Winger Lucas Neal there also made the second goal, his curling free kick finding the head of Australian countryman Tim Cahill after 64. 10 became 9 for the Lions when Richard Sadlier saw red for a second bookable offence late in the game. So we were down to 9. The chant that day, if I remember rightly, we've only got 9 kids, because it was a very, very young Mill side being rebuilt from the late 90s, near administration, near extinction of the club. Billy Bonds had been manager the previous season. This season was a management of Keith Stevens single-handedly. He would be joined by Alan McCleary, 2 club legends, but as joint manager the following campaign. This is 1998-99, so this was just Rhino on his own. So I promised you the report from the Wolverhampton Express and Star, big regional newspaper of the time. Don't know if it still goes, probably not. Local papers have died a death, but manager Brian Little for Stoke threatens to get tough with sad Stoke, say the Express and Star. Mill 2, Stoke City 0. Stoke manager Brian Little has wielded the axe over his struggling squad after they allowed 9-man Millwall to inflict their 4th successive defeat and nudged them out of the playoff zone. Stoke had a 1-man advantage after just 4 minutes. Bobby Bowery saw red for his challenge on Ray Wallace, but Stoke still failed to produce anything to test the reduced Mill numbers. Then Mill striker Richard Sadlier joined his teammate on the sidelines after 70 minutes, so 20 minutes of 9 men. But it was the home side who took the initiative and could have eventually won by more than the 2-goal margin. What a performance this was, dear listeners. It was a performance lacking in strength, confidence or conviction for Stoke. Everything the opposite for Mill. It is full of strength, confidence and conviction by our young side that day. But this report is written from the Stoke perspective. They continue, leaving Brian Little threatening his troops with more than a dressing down. Quote, Mill showed a lot of heart and spirit, said Brian Little. Fair play to him. We've got too many in our side who haven't got that or have lost it. They won't stay here. It's time for change. That was probably one of the most disappointing results I've had in 12 years of management. We should never have lost that game, says Brian Little. Stoke fans had barely settled into their seats when Bowery was sent off from the field for violent conduct. But any hopes of victory were dashed when they realised they did not have the requisite drive or flair to take advantage. Dean Crowe for Stoke blazed over when he should have hit the target and was punished for that terrible miss when Neil Harris put Millwall ahead in the 39th minute. Lucas Neal's corner finding its way through 6 pairs of Stoke feet. Kyle Lightbourne's half-time introduction briefly lifted spirits as he twice came close, but it was Crowe who again contrived to miss the target when it may have been easier to score. Millwall then stretched their lead when Tim Cahill was left unmarked to head home Neal's in-swinging free kick. And even Sadlier committed his second bookable offence 6 minutes later. They rarely looked in danger from Stoke's attack. Mill team on this wonderful game. It's one of the legendary fixtures of Millwall's history, really, and because it was such spine from a young side, and it was the first hint that better days were going to be coming. With the late 1990s, from the mid 90s till the start of this kind of era, were really dark days for the Lions. I don't think many of the younger listeners that we may have to this show, certainly the younger supporters, appreciate how close we came to going out of existence. Theo Pathetis was the man who, yes, he did save Millwall because he stepped in with minutes before the administrator set deadline to close the club in 1997 and turned us around with assistance, of course, from the young side that I'm going to name now. First name, I'd completely forgotten, praising his team to the eyeballs. Listen, I'd forgotten completely. Phil Smith in goal. Do you remember Phil Smith in goal, dear listener? I've forgotten him. We'll come back to him because I think one of the points, as I keep saying, of these shows is to give mention to less well-known players. And Phil Smith in goal beat me. I couldn't think of him at all. But anyway, it's Phil Smith in goal this day. Backline, Gerard Lavin, Joe Dolan, Stuart Nethercott and Jamie Stewart. Midfield, Lucas Neal, been mentioned repeatedly in the press reports. Tim Cahill, goal scorer. Bobby Bowery, red card Bobby Bowery. Stephen Reed, replaced by Mark Bircham on 56 minutes. Neil Harris up front, replaced by Paul Eiffel on 74, and Richard Sadler, who would see a second yellow for a second bookable. Unused sub that day was Robbie Ryan. Now, as I say, this was a season under the sole management of Keith Stevens, a club legend. I thought it might be worth just mentioning Keith Stevens. I don't think we mention him very often in these shows, and there's absolutely no reason why that should be so, but it's just the way it goes sometimes. The second highest appearance number in Mill history, 557, behind Kitch. I think it's 592 from memory. So, yeah, second highest ever appearance as a player. Played for us between 1980 and 1999. This is from Neil's A to Z book. 10 goals in that time. He was born in Merton in 1964. His career took in Millwall, then manager and joint manager 1998 with Alan McCleary, 99 sacked in September 2000 by Theo Pathetis, before going to manage briefly Fisher Athletic in Rotherhithe, and then departing for Australia, the Brisbane Roar in the Aussie Women's Western League, and then into business. I think he owned some franchises, Subway sandwich franchises in Queensland, also coached at Queensland Academy of Sport, the Brisbane Roar, and the Southport School, must be an Aussie school there. It was one of Bob Pearson's early discoveries. This is the biog from Neil's book. And he was on the point of signing for West Ham, can you believe it? Before Peter Anderson gave him a debut at right back, before switching him to central defence, before George Graham switched him to central defence, I should say. He won the Football League trophy with us in 1983 and was part, of course, of the Division 3 title-winning side, and then helped to win the Division 2 title in 1988, and a decade later became manager after Billy Bonds. I would say Keith Stevens as a manager had his limits, and this was a direct footballing side, and it took Mark McGee to finish the job that Bonds, then Stevens and McCleary started. They brought in, through a case of having to, in truth, money was too tight to mention, like the song says, but he was part of a process of improvement that led to a classic Mill side, a Division 3 title-winning side, and then a side that came achingly close to playoff football to get into the Premier League. Keith Stevens is a giant of Mill history, and he should be mentioned more often, and I chastise myself, dear listeners, for not mentioning him enough. So Keith Stevens was manager of this particular game, this particular season, in League, I think it's called Division 2 back then. It's the third division, as I always think of it. We would finish 10th in this 1998-99 season. Billy Bonds preceded him, and then obviously after this season it would be joint management of Alan McCleary. But a 10th place finish was respectable because we'd been struggling. Administration had sapped a lot of the the best players. The club came close to going out of existence, as I've said already. Top scorer for this particular season was one that Neil Harris, who had signed from Cambridge City famously for £30,000. He played 43 times, scored 18 goals in all comps, closely pursued by Paul Shaw. Anyone remember Paul Shaw? Baldy Shaw. 37 appearances, 14 goals, so a good duo up front this particular season, and a very young Richard Sadler, who had yet to really make a mark. He scored 7 times, in fairness to him, from 26 showings. But I remember the Richard Sadler, who earned the second yellow card in this particular fixture, being a very skinny boy. He would not really come good, in my humble opinion, until 2001-2. And that's probably another story for another day. When he became possibly one of the greatest prospects that never made it in Millwall history, Richard Sadia. But on this particular occasion, saw a 70th minute second yellow and would leave the field of play. So there we are. We finished 10th in the table. A platform upon which we could build, I think, is probably the best way to describe this season. Now then, Phil Smith in goal. I'd forgotten that name entirely, dear listeners, and possibly for this reason. He only played 5 times for us between 1998 and 2001. Do you remember Phil Smith out there, listeners? I can't say I do. But there he is. His career took in Millwall, 5 games. Ashford Town, Croydon, Walton and Hersham, the Folkestone, Invicta, Dover, non-league sides. Before coming back with Swindon Town, Pompey in 2012, Swindon 2006 and Pompey in 2012. The little biography here says Phil Smith was expected to go on to become Millwall's first home-produced custodian since Brian Horne. However, he finished sharing duties with Nigel Spink and Ben Roberts until the arrival of Tony Warner saw him sent out on a series of non-league loan moves. Those are the clubs we've just mentioned. He would win England's C honours whilst at Crawley before Dennis Wise gave him a second chance in the league at Swindon Town, where he became Player of the Year in 2007. How about that? After helping win promotion from Division 2. Phil was a member of the Swindon side that won a League title in 2012, League 2 title in 2012, and these days is now sales director of a glass structures firm post-game. Fair play, Phil Smith. One of the purposes of these shows is to give shout-outs to the less well-known players. For me, he falls into that category, but it sounds like he went on to a happier ending elsewhere with other clubs, and I'd take my cap off to Phil Smith. Debut made for Millwall in 1998 in a 1-1 draw v Gillingham, but was part of one of the great games in Millwall history, really, with this 2-0 win with a very young Millwall side, including another name that I've picked out. I don't think we've mentioned Jamie Stewart before. A troubled boy, shall we say, Jamie Stewart. I always liked Jamie. I thought he was a potential that was unfulfilled. I think he was one of those players that left you with a sense that he could have been much, much more, but he got mixed up in a bad scene, as they say. Left back, played for us 1998 to 2001. 54 games. The reason I probably fell more softly towards Jamie Stewart is my now deceased uncle, Uncle Murray, used to coach in Sid Cup, and I think Jamie Stewart's one of his kids. Always come back raving about what a prospect Jamie Stewart was. He would start his career with Charlton, of course, where he would test positive. After a promising opening phase, he tested positive for cocaine and cannabis, leading to a sacking by the addicts. He then came to Millwall, but as Neil's book here puts it, the damage had been done and he failed to rediscover his early promise. The best spell of his career came at Grays Athletic, where he won a Conference South title in 2004 and the FA Trophy in 2005 and 2006. He was their Player of the Year. What's he doing post-game? Jamie is a director of a Sid Cup-based roofing company. So fair play. Big shout-out to Jamie. Big shout-out to Jamie Stewart. Like I've said, young men, listeners, what can you say? We've all been there. And finally, a name from the past, and again, another player that probably doesn't get as many mentions as he should, but he was a brilliant player, Lucas Neal, from Sydney in Australia, 1978, played for Mill, 1995, 2002, 175 games for Millwall, 14 goals. His career took in the Australian Institute of Sport, Millwall, from 1995. He went to Blackburn, West Ham, of course, Everton, Galatasaray, Al Jazeera in the UAE, Al Wazil, I'm guessing another Arabian side there, Sydney FC, a Japanese side, Omiya Ardija, Watford, and Doncaster. A much-travelled boy, Lucas. I didn't realise he'd been to so many clubs as his career progressed. By 2014. Doncaster Rovers he finished in. That's a bit less glamorous, isn't it, than some of those other names. Neil's biography has it that Lucas joined Millwall on a free transfer from the Aussie Institute of Sport, and 2 years later was voted the Lions Player of the Year. He was. A right back, he was a member of the squad that lifted the second division title in 2001. Mill's longest-serving player with 6 seasons service when he submitted a transfer request and joined Blackburn Rovers. Blackburn at this time were going great guns. They'd had their league title in the 90s, and I suppose Lucas wanted a slice of some of the action, didn't he? Who can blame him, looking back? Cup tie for Rovers 2002 League Cup final. He later reunited with his close friend Tim Cahill at Everton. The former Australian international has business interests that include licensed restaurants and property. I'm guessing, don't know if that's in Australia or in Europe. But Lucas Neal, great player for us. I always liked Lucas, a player of style, and when he left us, we did miss him. I know he gets caned a bit for the whole West Ham business, but it's a professional game. You got to earn your money when and where you can at that age. So big shout out to Lucas Neal if you're listening. There we are, dear listeners. Millwall 2, Stoke 0. 9 men. We've only got 9 kids. I think that was the phrase, wasn't it? 9 kids. We've only got 9 kids. Wonderful win in front of 7,855. Times have moved along a lot since then, but this is one that sticks in the memory of anyone that was at the Den that day. The atmosphere sometimes with just 7,000 odd fans can be as good as 15,000, 16,000 at Mill. It's one of the peculiarities of our dear little club. There we are. Hope you've enjoyed that look back at a great Mill fixture. I will play us out now with the Millwall song, and I shall be back with the next edition of Achtung Millwall ahead of, I think it's Leicester next, so I'll have to do a preview for Leicester, so stay tuned for Leicester when that appears. Until then, from me, Nick Hart, it's Arrivederci Millwall. Bye for now, dear listeners. Bye for now. Just a little postscript, dear listeners. I think I said in my soliloquy there that I couldn't find any YouTube footage. There is YouTube footage, and I'll stick a link in the show notes. I couldn't have searched very hard, could I? Very brief, but you will get a sense of the promise and the talent of that Mills side. So I'll stick a link for that YouTube clip, 40 seconds long, in the show notes. Arrivederci Millwall. Bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.